Both local law enforcement and the FBI are working to find Nancy Guthrie, but as the Guthries hold on to that faith, uncertainty does still linger. It is a feeling that Mark Klass knows all too well. In 1993, his 12-year-old daughter, Polly, was abducted from her home in Northern California. For 2 months, thousands of volunteers joined investigators to try to find her, but the search ended tragically when she was found dead. Joining us, Mark Klass. He is the father of Polly Klass, who was abducted from her mother's home in 1993 and murdered. Again, she was 12 years old. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
I guess, what's it been like following this case?
It's triggering. Just watching Savannah go on the media every so often and make these heartfelt appeals reminds me of some of the things that I had to do. And you can just see the desperation on her face. You can just see how afraid she is and how out of control this situation is for her. There's nothing that she can do except work with law enforcement and make an occasional statement.
I guess if you were to give advice in a moment like this, having experienced it and gone through it yourself, again, with 2 months of uncertainty, what would that advice be?
Well, I would tell Savannah that she needs to depend upon her circle, her friends, her family, keep working with law enforcement, keep making those heartfelt statements. Hopefully she can touch somebody's heart and get a good resolution out of this. But to be aware and concerned about new friends, about people that just seem to appear in these situations and oftentimes have their own motives that really have nothing to do with the welfare of the case.
One of the hard parts about this case is that, as we understand it, from what we can glean, there's been no proof of life given. There's been no proof of body, it seems. I mean, there have been a number of ransom notes, one of which we know was fraudulent. The guy was arrested and charged. There have been others, but it doesn't appear like that the Guthries have paid anything. And it also does not appear that these kidnappers, if the ransom notes are legit, have offered evidence that they have her mom.
Here's the problem here. I mean, this could be a completely random individual that took Mrs. Guthrie. That means that law enforcement is going to have to investigate probably everybody before they're able to figure out who took this lady. And you've got the world's media there in this quiet enclave that are there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to report on this case. And truly nothing is happening in the case. It's so terribly difficult for absolutely everybody involved. Now, I'm sure that Savannah and her family believe that law enforcement is not doing a very good job, since their job right now is to recover her mother. You know, the media is creating its own noise because there's nothing really to report on the case. So you have conspiracy theories, you have all kinds of you have the psychics that get involved and say, well, I can solve this for you. Just buy me a ticket from New York to Tucson. You know, it's when there's nothing going on, people try to make something going on.
Yeah.
If that makes
sense. I understand what you're saying. You're basically arguing beware of the opportunists.
Well, yeah, beware of opportunists, but, you know, keep your eye on the prize here. Realize what it is you're trying to do. You're trying to recover a woman who has been taken from her family. And her family has got to be living in great fear right now. They've got to have great anger right now. There's no way that they're sleeping. They're probably not eating much more than a piece of pizza here and there. You know, these things wear you down over time. It becomes increasingly different to focus and stay involved in the case when you're being depleted on a regular basis.
Mark, how did you fare after you found out about your daughter, after you after the body was recovered, after you found out what happened to her. How were you after that?
Yeah, I wanted to die. I mean, I was called into the Petaluma Police Department 2 days before Paulie's body was recovered, after they had already arrested the man who did it. And they told me at that point that I need to get used to the fact that Paulie is probably dead. Well, I blew up at law enforcement. I blew up at the FBI and the police captain that were there, and just read them the riot act and said, until you can prove this to me, you have absolutely no right in the world to make these kinds of statements to me. Yet 2 days later, when they called me back into the office with my ex-wife, they were crying, and we knew what was coming down. They told us that Paulie was dead. And my ex-wife cried. We asked if we could bring our families in so they wouldn't hear it on the news. We brought them in. Everybody was crying, but I wasn't crying. It was only many hours later when what my brain understood finally got to my heart, and I just exploded. It was just the worst feeling I've ever had. I mean, I had held on to hope for 64 days that I would get my little girl back alive, and it just couldn't happen, and it didn't happen. And from that point on, for a long time, I wanted to die. I really did. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. I went through 10 years of counseling. The work that I did, the legislative work, the search and rescue work that I did became my therapy. The lady I'm married to and have been for the last 42 years has been an absolute rock for me. She's been what I've been able to hold on to. And after all of that time, after all of these decades, I can say that I've got a good life again. But a couple of things. First of all, I had to know the truth. As difficult as it is, once you find out the truth, it's better than going through life in limbo, because then at least you can move your life forward, whatever that means. And then secondly, I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to know anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. And it just is absolutely the worst situation a person can be in. But with a lot of hard work and love and understanding and support, one can recover.
That's good to hear. Mark, I'm sorry this has been triggering. I feel you. And I'm just sorry that you went through it. I'm sorry the Guthries are going through it. Everybody who's been through an experience like this. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the work that you've done in regards to this, and for being so emotionally available to us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie.